I had always thought of Mark as more than just my neighbor. He was a friend, someone I trusted implicitly. We lived next door to each other for over a decade, sharing laughs, beers, and sometimes even family holidays. He was the kind of guy who would help you fix a leaking pipe or lend you his tools without asking for anything in return. Our wives were friends, too, and as much as I tried to ignore it over the years, I couldn't deny that Lisa, my wife, had always had this flirtatious streak. It was harmless, or so I convinced myself, just a bit of fun, a wink here, a smile there. After all, she was beautiful, and she knew it. I trusted her, or maybe I just didn't want to see what was happening right under my nose. Lisa had always been a bit more lively than the typical suburban wife. She'd dress provocatively at times, making heads turn when we attended parties or went out to dinner. I liked it, to some extent. It made me proud that other men found her attractive. She could charm a room effortlessly, and there were times I enjoyed the thrill of having someone so captivating by my side. But I never imagined that behind the fun and teasing, something much darker was brewing. Mark was always there for us, for me. We bonded over shared interests like football, fixing things around the house, and cracking jokes that would make our wives roll their eyes. His wife, Cindy, was sweet, quieter compared to Lisa, and I never thought much of it when Lisa would spend extra time chatting with Mark while I was busy working on a project or running errands. It was harmless, I told myself. What could possibly go wrong between two people who'd been neighbors for so long? They were just friends, right? But things started to feel different about a year ago. I couldn't quite place my finger on it at first. Maybe it was the way Lisa laughed a little too hard at Mark's jokes or the fact that I caught them exchanging glances during our backyard barbecues. I brushed it off, unwilling to give it thought. After all, I was always taught to trust the people you love. Then came that one night, one that would forever change everything. I had gotten home late after staying late at work, finishing up a project that had me exhausted. Lisa was already asleep, or at least she pretended to be. I kissed her on the forehead, and as I turned to head to the shower, I noticed her phone lighting up on the nightstand. I never snooped through her things, but something in my gut urged me to take a look. I wish I hadn't. The message was from Mark, and it was anything but innocent. Can't stop thinking about you. Today was incredible. I froze, my heart pounding as I scrolled through their messages. The further I went, the more my stomach churned. They had been sneaking around for months. Messages filled with dirty talk, secret meetups, and promises that tore my heart apart. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Mark, my friend, my neighbor, the man I trusted with my family, was sleeping with my wife. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling a rage unlike anything I'd ever experienced. How could she do this to me? How could he? Every interaction between them, every joke, every smile, it all took on a new, sickening meaning. I wanted to wake her up right then and there, scream at her, demand answers. But I didn't. Instead, I slipped into the bathroom and collapsed onto the floor, my head spinning. For the next few days, I tried to act normal, even though everything inside me was falling apart. I couldn't confront her, not yet. I needed time to process, to figure out what the hell I was going to do. I spent hours pacing the house while Lisa went about her day, pretending like everything was fine. I avoided Mark like the plague. The sight of him made me sick, and I could barely look at him without wanting to punch him in the face. How could he betray me like this? I tried to act like everything was fine when Lisa would smile at me, touch my arm, or try to initiate sex, but I couldn't stop picturing her with him, her moans, the way she touched him. It consumed me. Every night I would lie in bed, next to her, unable to sleep, haunted by the images of them together. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to confront her, but I wanted to catch her in the act. I wanted to see with my own eyes what was really going on between them. So, one evening, I told her I had a late meeting at work and would be home late. But instead of going to work, I parked down the street and waited. It didn't take long before Mark showed up, just like I knew he would. I watched as he knocked on the door, and Lisa let him in, her face lighting up as she welcomed him with a kiss. I stormed out of the car, every step heavy with anger. I burst through the door and found them in the living room, their hands all over each other. The shock on their faces when they saw me was priceless. "What the fuck is going on?" I roared, my fists clenched, trembling with fury. Lisa jumped back, her face pale, while Mark stammered, trying to come up with some bullshit excuse. "It's not what you think," Lisa tried to say, but her voice faltered. "Not what I think," I yelled. "I've seen the messages. I've seen everything." The room fell silent as the weight of my words settled in. There was no more hiding, no more pretending. They had been caught, and there was no way out of it. I wanted to hit Mark, to beat him to a pulp for what he had done, but somehow, I managed to hold back. I wasn't going to let this turn into something even worse. Instead, I looked at Lisa, the woman I had loved for so long, and felt nothing but disgust. "How could you do this to me? To us?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't have an answer. She just stood there, her eyes filled with guilt and shame, but it wasn't enough. Nothing she could say or do would ever fix what she had done. Our marriage, our life together, it was all a lie. Mark tried to apologize, but I cut him off. "Get the hell out of my house," I snarled, pointing to the door. He hesitated for a moment, but when he saw the look in my eyes, he knew better than to push his luck. He slunk away, leaving me alone with Lisa. I didn't need to say anything more to her. The damage was done. I packed my bags that night and left, not bothering to look back as I walked out the door. That was the last time I saw her, my wife, the woman who had promised to love me, honor me, and be faithful. She had destroyed everything with her lies, her deceit, and her betrayal. As for Mark, I couldn't bear to stay in that neighborhood anymore. Every corner, every street, every house was a reminder of what I had lost. So, I moved away, far enough that I wouldn't have to see his face or hear his name ever again. In the end, they got what they wanted, a life together, built on lies and betrayal. But I knew, deep down, that their happiness wouldn't last. They would destroy each other, just like they had destroyed me. Life after the betrayal was a slow, painful rebuild. After I moved to a new town, I tried to leave behind all the memories of Lisa and Mark. But it wasn't easy. You think you can just walk away from something like that, but the truth is, it follows you. Late at night, in those quiet moments when you're alone with your thoughts, that's when the ghosts of the past sneak up on you. They whisper in your ear, reminding you of the things you'd rather forget. Rachel was different, though. She didn't push me. She knew I was broken in ways that couldn't be fixed overnight. We met at a small cafe where she worked, and it started off simple, friendly chats, a few jokes over the counter. She had this warmth about her, a kindness I hadn't felt in a long time. She never asked too many questions, never pried into my past. It was like she understood without me having to explain. At first, I wasn't sure if I was ready to get involved with anyone. The scars Lisa left on me were still raw, and trust felt like a foreign concept. But Rachel was patient. We took things slow, long walks in the park, casual dinners, and late-night conversations that didn't carry the weight of expectations. She never pressured me to be more than I could be at the moment, and that was what I needed. Still, there were moments when the past would resurface. I'd catch myself wondering if Rachel would eventually betray me too. I'd analyze her words, her actions, looking for any hint that she might turn out like Lisa. It wasn't fair to her, I knew that, but it was like I couldn't help it. Once you've been burned like that, it changes you. Makes you see the world in a different, darker way. There was one night in particular that stands out. Rachel and I had been seeing each other for about 6 months, and things were going well. We were sitting on. There was one night in particular that stands out. Rachel and I had been seeing each other for about 6 months, and things were going well. We were sitting on my couch, watching some old movie. of us was really paying attention to. She had her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, I felt content. It was a fleeting moment, but it was there. Then her phone buzzed. It was nothing, a text from a friend, just a quick reply. But it triggered something in me. My mind flashed back to all the nights I'd spent sitting beside Lisa, thinking everything was fine, only to later discover that her phone had been lighting up with messages from Mark. I stiffened, and Rachel noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" she asked, sitting up to face me, concern etched on her face. I shook my head, trying to shake off the irrational thoughts, but they clung to me like shadows. "Nothing. It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. All the hurt, the betrayal, the doubts, it all came rushing back. I could feel myself pulling away from Rachel, not physically, but emotionally, like I was building up walls to protect myself from getting hurt again. "Dan, talk to me," she said softly, reaching for my hand. "What's going on?" I didn't know how to explain it to her. How could I? She hadn't done anything wrong, but in my mind, I was already preparing for the worst, readying myself for another round of heartache. I'm sorry. Sometimes I get in my head, and it's hard to stop." She nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "Is this about her? About Lisa?" The way she said it, so gentle and compassionate, made me feel like an idiot for even comparing her to Lisa. But the truth was, I was terrified. Terrified that history would repeat itself, that I'd let my guard down only to get shattered all over again. "Yeah," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to let it go. I want to trust you, Rachel, I do. But sometimes it feels impossible." Rachel squeezed my hand. "I get it. I really do. But you have to know, I'm not her. I'm not going to hurt you like she did." And I believed her. I wanted to believe her. But scars Lisa left weren't just on my heart, they were etched into my soul, shaping how I saw the world, how I saw myself. We talked for hours that night, Rachel listening patiently as I poured out everything, the affair, the betrayal, the shame I felt for not seeing it sooner, the anger that still simmered beneath the surface. She didn't judge me. She didn't try to fix me. She just listened. That was the turning point, I think. The moment I realized that maybe, just maybe, I could move on. Rachel was offering me a chance to start over, to build something new. But I had to be willing to take the leap, to let go of the past, or at least stop letting it control me. Months passed, and things with Rachel continued to grow. We found a rhythm, a balance that worked for both of us. I won't lie and say it was easy. There were days when I still struggled, when the memories of Lisa would rear their ugly head, but Rachel never wavered. She stood by me, helping me piece myself back together, bit by bit. One evening, almost a year and a half after Mark's call, Rachel and I were at home, enjoying a quiet night in. She was curled up on the couch, reading a book, while I sat at the table, going over some work emails. The night was peaceful, serene. It felt like the calm I had been searching for, the life I had always wanted, with someone who genuinely cared for me. And then the doorbell rang. Rachel and I exchanged a glance, both of us caught off guard. We weren't expecting anyone. I got up, the floor creaking under my feet as I approached the door. When I opened it, the last person I ever expected to see was standing on the other side. Lisa. She looked different, thinner, older, her once vibrant eyes now dull with sadness. She stood there, biting her lower lip, her hands shaking slightly. It had been nearly 2 years since I had seen her, and the sight of her stirred a whirlwind of emotions I wasn't prepared for. Anger, confusion, pity, everything rushed to the surface. "Dan," she started. "Ted," her voice barely above a whisper. "Can we talk?" I didn't move. I couldn't. I just stared at her, a thousand questions swirling in my mind. Why was she here? What did she want? After everything she had done, what gave her the right to show up like this? What the hell are you doing here, Lisa? I finally managed to say, my voice colder than I intended. She flinched at my tone but didn't step back. I know I'm the last person you want to see, but, please, Dan, I need to talk to you. It's important. I opened my mouth to tell her to leave, to tell her I didn't want anything to do with her, but then Rachel appeared behind me, her presence grounding me. Who is it, Dan? She asked, her voice gentle as she placed a hand on my back. It's... I hesitated, unsure of how to even explain this. It's Lisa. Rachel's eyes flicked from me to Lisa, and for a brief moment, the air between us grew thick with tension. But Rachel, in her usual calm manner, gave me a slight nod, silent. TLY telling me she trusted me to handle this. She stepped back, giving us space, but not before squeezing my arm reassuringly. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. The cool night air hit my skin, a stark contrast to the heat of the emotions boiling inside me. You've got 2 minutes, Lisa. What do you want? I said, folding my arms across my chest. She looked down at the ground, her eyes brimming with tears. I know I have no right to ask for your time. I know I'm the one who ruined everything, and I deserve your anger. But I've lost everything, Dan, everything. And I didn't know who else to turn to. I stared at her, incredulous. You lost everything? You think I give a damn, Lisa? You think I care about your sob story after what you did to me? Please, just listen. She pleaded, wiping at her eyes. I'm not here to beg for your forgiveness. I'm here because I made a huge mistake, and I've been paying for it ever since. Mark, he left me, Dan, he left me with no thing. I scoffed, the bitterness rising up inside me. Good. You deserve every bit of that. She nodded, accepting my harsh words without protest. I know I do. But that's not why I'm here. There was a pause, a heavy silence between us before she spoke again. I'm sick, Dan, I have cancer. Her words hung in the air like a weight, sinking into my chest. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I had prepared myself for her to come here begging for sympathy, for forgiveness, but this was something else. I don't know how long I have, she continued, her voice shaky. The doctors, they say it's aggressive. I needed you to know. I needed to make things right before. I ran a hand over my face, trying to process what she was telling me. This woman, the same woman who had betrayed me, who had torn my life apart, was standing in front of me, telling me she was dying. And suddenly, all the anger, all the hatred I had carried for so long, felt pointless. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice quieter now. Because you're the only person I ever really loved, she whispered, her words a confession, raw and painful. And I destroyed that. I destroyed us. I don't expect you to forgive me, Dan, I didn't want to leave this world without telling you how sorry I am. Her words cut deep, reopening wounds I thought had healed. But as I looked at her, standing there so fragile and broken, I realized that holding on to my hatred for her wouldn't bring me peace. It wouldn't change what happened. I took a deep breath, letting the anger slowly ebb away. I'm sorry you're going through this, Lisa. But whatever you're looking for from me, I don't think I can give it to you. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. I didn't come here to ask for anything, Dan, I just needed you to know. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. We just stood there, two people who had once been everything to each other, now reduced to strangers with a shared history of pain. Finally, she turned to leave. Goodbye, Dan, she whispered, her voice barely audible. As I watched her walk away, something inside me shifted. Maybe it was the knowledge that she was dying, or maybe it was the realization that I didn't want to carry the weight of this anger anymore. But whatever it was, I felt lighter, like a burden had been lifted. When I went back inside, Rachel was sitting on the couch, waiting for me. She looked up at me, her eyes full of concern. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I sat down beside her, letting out a long breath. "I don't know," I admitted. "That was a lot." Rachel reached for my hand, holding it tightly. "You don't have to talk about it if you're not ready." But I did talk about it. I told her everything, about Lisa's betrayal, about her illness, about the strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. And Rachel, in her usual way, just listened. She didn't judge me, didn't try to fix me. She just let me feel what I needed to feel. In the weeks that followed, I thought a lot about Lisa's visit. It wasn't easy to shake the image of her standing there, so vulnerable and broken. I kept replaying our conversation in my head, wondering if I should have said more, if I should have offered her some kind of comfort. But then I reminded myself that I wasn't responsible for her choices. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. But one thing was clear, I couldn't go back to hating her. I had moved past that, and I wasn't about to let her illness drag me back into that dark place. I had a life now, a life with Rachel, a future that didn't involve the ghosts of the past. And so, I let it go. For good this time. Lisa's illness was tragic, but it wasn't my burden to carry anymore. I had spent too long grieving over what could have been, over the life I thought I had lost. But in reality, that life had never existed. It had been a lie, built on betrayal and deceit. What I had now, with Rachel, was real. It was built on trust, on honesty, on love. And as I looked at her, sitting beside me, her head resting on my shoulder, I knew that no matter what happened next, I was finally free. Free from the past. Free from the pain. Free to love again. And that, more than anything, was enough.